The Baltimore Ravens win a thriller in Week 5 against the Indianapolis Colts. We talk about it next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I am your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. We return here. It's a Victory Tuesday and a crazy Victory Tuesday at that as the Baltimore Ravens defeat the Indianapolis Colts. Yes, defeat them 31-25 in just what has been this Ravens season so far. Literally just wild victory after crazy drama, stuff combined together, just everything that could be crazy or could have gone crazy. Literally everything almost has. And this was another game where so much went wrong, a lot went right, and the right at the end of the day ends up trumping the wrong, and the Ravens get the victory 31-25. This was just, it was insane. The Ravens were down 22-3 at 3:06 left in the third quarter in this one. Like, it's absolutely insane how this team continues to be so resilient, so amazing. I mean, this was a win that was very hard fought and well earned by a team that really struggled throughout the first three quarters of this game. It looked like they were down and out. Guys had counted them out of this game. It was Haloti Ngata's Ring of Honor night. It was all this stuff going wrong on Haloti Ngata's Ring of Honor night. But the Ravens plot a win. Lamar Jackson goes nuclear, especially in the fourth quarter and in overtime to get the Ravens a victory to pull it out. That offense in the fourth quarter and overtime, I mean, it felt like nothing in the world could stop them. Now, it felt that way with the Indianapolis offense for most of the night, too. I feel like if the Ravens had gotten the ball back in overtime, this would be a much different show. But it's different because the Ravens ended up pulling out the victory when they needed to. They ended up making the big plays when they needed to. And that's what's so exciting about this team, right? This team has been so exciting, but they've also been hit so hard with injuries. They've had all this different stuff going into finding players, bringing them in, getting them up to speed, and making sure they're up to the level of their standards. And they're still 4-1. They're on top of the AFC North. I am so excited to talk about this one today. We're going to dive into the offensive performance. So really Lamar Jackson's performance. No, there are a bunch of other guys who contributed. But Lamar Jackson's performance and others for that offense in the first segment. We'll then talk about the defense, which was a pretty underwhelming performance, all things considered. Pretty concerning stuff that we'll talk about there in the second segment, and just how the defense can recover from the last few weeks. You know, they had a decently good game in Denver, but still this game against Indianapolis, they kind of took a step back. And then finally, just still almost going through what's next for the Ravens. They're up in Week 6 against the Los Angeles Chargers, which should be a very good game in its own right. The Chargers, in my eyes, are a contender. So let's dive into it here. But before we do that, if you're following along with us here on YouTube and you enjoy our content, be sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel. The goal here on Locked On Ravens, our first goal is 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And if you're following along with us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, in audio form, anywhere you get your podcasts, be sure to follow us so you know when our content comes out. That's Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at KLStrecker34. I do live game tweets on there, post Ravens news, analysis, updates, historical perspectives, and much, much more. Also, follow the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens for any show updates there. And thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. So with all that being said, let's dive right into it here. A crazy, wild, unbelievable, remarkable, whatever you want to call it, the Ravens get the win. They get the win 31-25 in overtime. Let's start off with just the pure box score stats. I'll pull them up here quickly. Lamar Jackson, we have to start off, and this will be a Lamar Jackson segment. I don't know if I've tweeted about Lamar Jackson in succession so many times ever, because it was just that kind of performance. Arguably his best game, definitely his best half, or I guess quarter of his NFL career. 37-43 for 442 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also had 14 carries for 62 yards. Also did lose a fumble at the 1-yard line, which was a pretty costly fumble, all things considered. But hey, the Ravens go 1-0. That fumble, big, but didn't matter at the end of the day. Lamar Jackson puts up his first 400-yard passing game of his career, just the second in Ravens history, the first coming in 1996. This game was about Lamar Jackson and what he was able to do, connecting with Marquis Brown on a deep shot, connecting with Mark Andrews twice, and then connecting with Brown again to end the game. The Ravens again down 22-3 with 3 minutes and 6 seconds left in the third quarter, in a game where really it was mistakes. It was mistakes on offense. It was mistakes on defense, special teams as well. It was throughout the entire 4 quarters that happened. But the offense stepped up. They got the job done when it mattered. Rodrigo Blankenship misses a field goal as time expires. We'll get into that in the second segment. Goes to overtime. The Ravens offense gets the ball. And at that point, it was for me, that coin flip decided the game. If the Ravens got the ball, I was really confident they were going to score. If the Colts got the ball, I was really confident they were going to score, just based off of how this game was going. Now, the defense, I'll give them a bit of credit, and we'll talk about this more in the second segment. They stepped up and got some stops. They were giving up tons of chunk yards, over 500 of this banged-up Indianapolis offense. But in the fourth quarter, they got stops when it mattered and limited the Colts to the point where the Ravens could tie the game up. So good on them. Back to the offense, though. Lamar Jackson was just on for most of the game. But, we'll take out the first half. We'll talk about the fourth quarter. In overtime, Jackson was just electric. I mean, just making guys miss, picking up yards with his legs. Obviously, the story, though, is his arm. His arm is the story. The Ravens' rushing attack, again, was a non-factor for the most part outside of Jackson. The running backs, we'll talk about them in a few seconds here, just did not get the job done whatsoever. So Jackson said, hey, man, I'm going to do it myself, and boy, did he do it. His pass-catching weapons, though, also did it. We talk a lot about this show on this show, a lot about Marquis Brown and Mark Andrews and what they bring to this team. Throughout the past couple of seasons, we've talked about, well, which player is going to have the big game? Because the defense is going to have to key in on one of them. Is it going to be Mark Andrews? Is it going to be Marquis Brown? In this game, it was both. Let's talk about these guys for a second. Overall, Mark Andrews led this team, 11 receptions for 147 yards on 13 targets, had 2 scores. And I was, on my Ravens Wire bowl predictions, I was 3 yards off of getting it right. I predicted Andrews to have 150 yards and 2 scores. He has 147 and 2 scores. So just barely off there. But you know what? I'll count it as a win, to be honest. I'm taking it as a win. Marquis Brown, 9 receptions, 125 yards, and 2 scores. Himself on 10 targets. So 23 combined targets for Andrews and Brown. They combined for 20 catches. I mean, these guys were on fire in this game. So the next guy outside of Andrews and Brown was Devin Duvernay with 4 receptions for 45 yards on 4 targets. Sammy Watkins, 2 for 35 on 3 targets. He left the game early, though. James Prochet made a nice catch in there as well. He was also a factor. Good to see Prochet in there. But this Baltimore team, it's been the thing we've talked about for, I'd say, the last couple of weeks, or the narrative for the last couple of seasons surrounding the Ravens and Lamar Jackson has been, if this run game does not work, if Lamar Jackson has to play from behind, if you force Lamar Jackson to throw the football, he is going to lose. The Ravens are going to lose. Well, what happened? What's that stat I said a couple minutes ago? 22-3. 22-3 in the third quarter, 3 minutes and 6 seconds left. The Ravens come back, tie the game, send it to overtime, win the game. Lamar Jackson carries the team not with his legs. He did contribute on the ground, but it was with his arm. Nuclear, again, as I had talked about. This Ravens offense is still trying to find their stride a bit, but I give credit to Greg Roman for adjusting. Greg Roman did not call a very good first half in this game. His third quarter was iffy. The fourth quarter and overtime, he let Lamar Jackson go to work. There was a bunch of more up-tempo stuff that we saw where the Ravens actually did a pretty good job against the Colts in that up-tempo, which was really nice to see. But the Ravens just finding chunk yards in this Colts defense. And people are going to say, yeah, well, the Colts were working with corners who were just signed off the street and this, that, and the other. Hey, the Ravens have injuries themselves too. And injuries, they happen, but they're not an excuse. The Ravens have had J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, right? How different is this game with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards in it, right? So it's a matter of, all right, the Ravens lost some guys. The Colts lost some guys. So, Sammy Watkins leaves the game. Ben Cleveland leaves the game. Those are injuries as well. But I'm just so impressed with Lamar Jackson. He is a front runner for MVP right now, definitely in that conversation. It's absurd if he's not for some people, just based off of what he has done. And by the way, Lamar Jackson, 442 yards, right? Passing, 86% completion percentage. I mean, just unbelievable. He is the highest quarterback, or his numbers are the highest for quarterbacks who have thrown over 400 yards in terms of completion percentage. He has the highest completion percentage for a quarterback who has thrown over 400 yards at 86%. It's absurd. He's 5th in the NFL in passing yards, 8th in the NFL in rushing yards. This guy is a generational talent. We are seeing it. It is on full display right now. He's human. He's not perfect. There are mistakes still, but it's good to just celebrate what he has done. He did it yesterday. He is going to be such a good player in this league. I mean, he already is. People are now, I think, just beginning to wake up to it, at least outside people, right? A lot of people within Baltimore who watch Lamar Jackson, they know. Even people outside of Baltimore, they respect it and they love Lamar Jackson's game. But these haters are slowly running out of things to talk about because each narrative is slowly getting crushed by Lamar Jackson, by this Ravens offense. John Harbaugh, Ozzie Newsome, Steve Biscotti, Eric DeCosta, everyone, they end up trusting Lamar Jackson with the keys of this offense, and he has repaid them time and time and time again. All right, there could be a lot more times there, but I think that Lamar Jackson, one of his best games, if not his best game as a passer overall, and I'm definitely saying his best half as a passer completely throughout his NFL career. The Ravens run attack, though, before we head into our first break, not great, 3.4 yards per carry. Lamar Jackson led this team with 14 carries for 62 yards. That's a 4.4 yards per carry average. The running backs were non-existent in terms of factor. Latavius Murray, 6 for 17. That's 2.8 yards per carry. Tyson Williams, 4 for 6, 1.5 yards per carry. Devonta Freeman, 1 for 1. That's 1 yard per carry. Now, Freeman actually made some noise in the pass game, 3 receptions for 34 yards. He was key on some of those late game drives. But the Ravens honestly have to figure out their rushing attack, and they have to do it pretty quickly. This is a team that can be carried by Lamar Jackson, but they're probably saying, let's make life easier on Lamar Jackson. Let's get back to those J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards rushing days. And, without those two, they're not going to get there. But hopefully they can be able to get into that groove because the run game over the past 3 weeks, teams have been keying in on it a bit, but it has just not been good overall. I'm not saying the players aren't talented, but they have to get it together in that aspect. So overall, a stunning performance in the second half and then the fourth quarter and overtime by Lamar Jackson. He's a player that is going to continue to earn his respect. He's had mine for a very long time now, and hopefully people start to continue to wake up to just what a special player he is. And this was a very special game from Lamar Jackson. We're going to head into our first break, though. When we get back, we're going to be diving into the defense, get into a bit of what went wrong for them and how they were able to step up in the fourth quarter a bit. So stay tuned for that. And we will be back soon. But before we do that, Bet Online here. We're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back on for another football season. As always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use a mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. We return here. It's our second segment of this Victory Tuesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher, your host, still hanging out with you here, talking with you after an amazing, incredible 31-25 overtime victory over the Indianapolis Colts. In Week 5, Baltimore again moves to 4-1. They are the leaders of the pack in the AFC North right now, followed by Cincinnati and Cleveland at 3-2, and Pittsburgh at 2-3. Now, Baltimore on the defensive side of the ball, because that's where we're headed here in the second segment, was pretty rough overall. The Colts were gashing this Ravens defense, whether it was with the run, whether it was with the pass. Now, Adafe, Owen, and Tavon Young, let's talk about these two players. Adafe Owen played a really, really good game, had a forced fumble on the Colts early in this game when they were driving down the field, kind of a momentum stopper there. Owen has been so good this year. I mean, the 31st overall pick, and people were saying, he had no sacks at Penn State in his final year. He's going to be terrible. He can't translate. Well, he's translated pretty well, I'd say so far. Has made impact after impact, has played really well. And it's not just the box score stats. Owen was all over the field. He was making tackles. He was doing a bunch of good things, getting pressure on the quarterback. He is a do-it-all player. He is a stud. And the best part about him is that he has a lot of room to grow. We talk about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's 24 years old. He still has tons of room to grow. Adafe Owe has only been playing football here for a few seasons, a few years, and he still has plenty of potential, plenty of room to grow for him. He was all over. I was very impressed with what Owe brought to the table. Tavon Young had a really good game outside. We'll get to it in a second, but before we get to the penalty, Tavon Young was flying around, making tackles. He was wrapping up really well. Had a sack on Carson Wentz off a corner blitz, which was really good. He was all over the field as well, but the good for him kind of got washed out by the bad, and that was the penalty towards the end of the game. Now, to be fair to Tavon Young, Jack Doyle slammed his head into the ground. It was a clear cheap shot move, right? Terrible, awful move by Jack Doyle, completely his fault. I hope it was worth it, Jack Doyle, because he took the loss anyway, but whatever. Tavon Young gets up and pushes Jack Doyle, and Doyle, kind of keels over, almost, it looked like he was dead. He kind of lost all movement in his body, just kind of fell over. The refs, they always go for the guy who retaliates. Tavon Young was the guy who retaliated. It's 15 yards. It gets the Colts really close to field goal range. They start to get some momentum there. The Ravens, they get the stop. They're able to get the Colts field goal unit on the field, and Rodrigo Blankenship misses that field goal. And look, I'll tell you, there was nobody who was happier for that miss of Rodrigo Blankenship than Tavon Young in that moment. Now, Young, he owned up to it. He said that can't happen and stuff like that. So it's good on him that he actually owned up to it. But if that was how the game ended, after the Ravens offense did so much work to get back into it, after the Ravens defense started to finally hold a bit in the fourth quarter, it would have been a bad ending. And, talking about mistakes, looking at Marlon Humphrey at the end of the first half, where the Colts send out Rigoberto Sanchez and they have a running back holding the snap on that field goal, and Marlon Humphrey jumps off sides, and it kind of looked like he just kind of gave up on it. He didn't really work to get back on sides, because if he had gotten back on sides before the ball was snapped, it would have been fine. The issue was Humphrey was kind of slow getting back. The ball was snapped. It was offsides, 5 yards for the Colts. And then Rodrigo Blankenship comes back onto the field, converts the field goal, and the Colts have 3 extra points before the half. So I don't know whether Humphrey just didn't understand that the play wasn't over because he had jumped off sides and he could have still gotten back, or whatever it was, but that was also a pretty bad mistake on Humphrey's part. Now, I think that Anthony Averitt probably had one of the worst games, if not the worst game of his entire career. Averitt had played really, really well leading up to this game. He was just picked on relentlessly by Carson Wentz in this one. Averitt was targeted. It literally seemed like it was every single play that it was a pass. It was Anthony Averitt getting targeted. Just not great. And it was a bad game for him. Really, really bad game. Patrick Queen also struggled again. He's going to have to figure stuff out, but this is a part of learning through mistakes and kind of playing through mistakes, where obviously the big thing with Queen is tackling. And Marlon Humphrey got on Queen. It was a tackle that Queen missed, and Humphrey got on him about it. And look, I think Queen understands what's happening here. He understands that he's not playing up to his level of potential. Queen is still a young guy. He's a second-year player. I still think that we're going to see a lot better out of Patrick Queen over the course of the year. But look, there's no doubt that he's not playing well right now. He struggled a bit to start the year, ever really since the Week 1 game against Las Vegas. It's been kind of a struggle for him. Pulling up some of the actual team stats for the defense in particular, just based off of what they gave up. The Colts went 5 of 10 on third down. That's 50%. Not ideal, definitely. They also go 1 of 1 on fourth down. That was a big fourth down conversion, actually. Total yards, 513 for the Colts. That's a lot of yards. It's a lot of yards. Carson Wentz goes over 400 in this one as well. 402 passing yards. Jonathan Taylor, 15 carries for 53 yards and a score. Also 3 receptions for 116 yards and a score on that screen pass. Now, screen passes have been a really big weak point for the Ravens on defense for a really long time. It seems like we've been talking about it for a while, and the Ravens just haven't figured it out. Now, to be fair to the Ravens, it's an easy way to beat their defense to an extent, especially on obvious blitzing situations where Don Martindale's bringing a blitz. What beats a blitz? The short passing game. You get the ball out quickly. You have open space in front of you. A lot of the defenders are behind the line of scrimmage. That's how it works. Screen passes in the short passing game beats aggressive and blitzing defenses. And the Colts have used that to their advantage in this game. At least they did. That Jonathan Taylor play, I don't think the Ravens even touched Jonathan Taylor on that play. But, he goes for that touchdown, and it's kind of like, oh, no. Is this what it's going to be tonight? And over the first 3 quarters, it was, yeah, that's what it's going to be tonight. But the fourth quarter, the Ravens buckle down. They're able to force some really key plays. Calais Campbell with that blocked field goal after the previous play, stuffing a run on 3rd down. So good for Calais Campbell. I appreciate Calais Campbell a lot, definitely. But overall, the defense still has issues with tackling. Anthony Averitt needs to get back to his form. Week 6 will not be any easier. We'll talk about it in the final segment, but Week 6 will not be any easier going up against a Los Angeles Chargers team with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler and a bunch of other offensive weapons. So hopefully they'll be able to get it back on track. But, I think John Harbaugh in his post-game press conference said it best, where, you have to take the impressive and just appreciate it for what it is. But, there's an opportunity for them to get a lot better. And on defense in particular, an opportunity for them to get a lot better, because this was not the standard Ravens defense performance. This whole year really hasn't been the standard Ravens defensive performances that we've been really accustomed to seeing over these last few years. The Colts averaged 8.1 yards per play throughout this entire game. Kind of looking and feeling that out. 8.1 yards per play is a ton. Now, the Ravens averaged 7.5, and the Colts and the Ravens actually each had the same amount of drives. The Ravens actually outgained the Colts by 10 yards, funny enough, 523 to 513. But this still was a game overall. Chunk plays on the ground. Chunk plays through the air. The fourth quarter won them this game, and obviously overtime with the offense. But on defense, the Ravens only give up 3 points in the fourth quarter. The Ravens score 16 to tie the game. And that's how it goes. Sometimes you just need those breaks where you're having a bad game. The game isn't going your way. And what can you do to step up and make sure that you can secure a win for your team is to do your job. And the Ravens did their job for the most part on defense in the fourth quarter. And that's really, it's the growth. Hopefully this team can get a lot better on defense. Brandon Stevens filling in for Deshaun Elliott led this team with 12 total tackles. Anthony Averitt had 7. He was getting picked on a bit. I think that's why his tackle number was so high. Patrick Queen had 6 tackles, also a tackle for loss. Queen made a couple of nice plays. I'm not going to discredit him completely, but still does need to get better. Tyus Bowser, 6 tackles for McPhee, 5. Tavon Young, Calais Campbell, Marlon Humphrey, Chuck Clark all had 4. And then, just continuing down the list, 3, 2, 1, 0. So the Ravens, I think, missed Deshaun Elliott tonight. They didn't miss him as much last week just because of the game. They didn't really need Deshaun Elliott. It would have been nice to have him in week 4, but they didn't need him. But definitely in week 5, they missed him. It would have been nice to have a thumping presence, a guy who could make a lot of plays. Chuck Clark had a decent game, I'd say. He's been still playing great. I'm still very pleased with what I saw out of Chuck Clark. Brandon Williams had an okay game as well. He missed a tackle or 2, but with Brandon Williams in the game, the Ravens rushing offense is better than it is without him. So big credit to him. The defense struggled. There's no sugarcoating it, but they kind of strapped down when it mattered and helped the Ravens get a win. So not an overall great day for them, or a great night, I guess, for them, but hopefully they can continue to build and get better and go into week 6, which with a much better performance. We're going to head into our final break, though. When we get back, we're going to be diving into what's up next for the Ravens and continuing to digest this wild and crazy win. So stay tuned for that, and we will be right back. But with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Wander out from pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They have everything you need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. We've returned here, our final segment of this Victory Tuesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you, and we're going to be now diving into, continuing to talk about this game, of course, but just what's up next for this Ravens team. going up against a very impressive 4-1 Chargers team that will be traveling to Baltimore, so across the country. Justin Herbert playing like an MVP right now. Very, very skilled offense around him. I mentioned Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, a bunch of other guys on that offense as well. On defense, Derwin James, Joey Bosa, a bunch of guys. Seriously, this defense and offensive unit for them really good. Chris Harris is on that defense. Asante Samuel Jr. is on that defense. So there's going to be a tough game. I know we've talked about injuries before and often on this show and just how resilient they've been, but this goes beyond that to an extent, because it's one thing to say, oh, we're overcoming the injuries and we're working guys in and we're figuring it out, which absolutely, right, that is impressive to me. I'm not taking away from it. But in a game, in prime time, against a good team, the Colts were kind of counted out. The defense for the Colts gave the Ravens a lot of issues last season. And I kind of mentioned the turning point. There were turning points last year that the Indianapolis game had. Chuck Clark and Marcus Peters being that main one, as Marcus Peters forced a fumble, and Chuck Clark ended up returning the fumble for a touchdown. That was, to me, the turning point in that game. In this game, I kind of thought it was going to be the Adafe Owe fumble, but unfortunately, it didn't come until a lot later. Honestly, that touchdown to Marquis Brown really sparked it. It was the spark to this Ravens team that they needed. And the Ravens never doubt themselves. They never don't believe in themselves. They believe they have a chance as long as Lamar Jackson on the field. Marquis Brown has made that very clear. I've made it very clear. I'm not a part of the organization, but it's something that a lot of people believe, because Lamar Jackson is just that electric of a talent, and he deserves to have his praises sung when he does well. Now, also, he deserves to have some criticism when he doesn't do well. He missed a couple throws, but he completed 86% of his passes. So, yes, he missed Marquis Brown in the end zone. He missed a couple other throws, but he completed 86% of his passes. One more time, 86% of his passes. This is an unprecedented performance, and it's not like he threw 20 passes or 14 passes. He threw 43 passes, 37 of 43, being able to, after such a bad 3 quarters, the Ravens end up coming out in the fourth quarter with fire, with energy. They're pumped up. The crowd gets back into it. And once that M&T Bank crowd is back into it, I mean, it's tough. It's tough for any opponent out there. So just watching this game, seeing how this Ravens team started to respond, watching the Ravens rally around their leader in a game setting, right? Everybody talks about how Lamar Jackson is such a good person off the field, and I agree. He is. I think he's one of the most charismatic players in the league. He's one of the kindest players in the league. But on the field, he lets his playing talent speak for himself. He kind of goes out there and does what he does, doesn't let anybody believe or take away his belief in himself. And I will say something. I think Lamar Jackson, I'm not saying this is a bad thing necessarily, but Lamar Jackson, I think, is kind of passing up open running lanes sometimes to throw the football. Now, sometimes it's a great decision. Other times he leaves yards on the field. And it goes with him saying, it makes sense, right? It goes with what he was saying about, I'd rather throw it than run it, this, that, and the other. He was saying stuff along those lines. I understand it. He's a quarterback, and he has immense arm talent. And some of the people, when they look at Lamar Jackson and they see him running, pulling the ball down, running, it's, he's a running back, and he can't do this, and he can't throw the football. That's why he's running. That's not what it is whatsoever. I'm not saying Jackson's in his own head, because I don't think he is. But to me, at least, it's definitely something where I don't care how the yards are picked up, whether it's throwing, whether it's running. I would rather have Lamar Jackson rush for a 50-yard touchdown than throw it for 30 yards and get stuffed on the next 3 plays. That's something that's just me. But Lamar Jackson, I know he believes in himself. This team believes in Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson believes in his teammates. And that's what makes this team so good. If you don't believe in the players you line up next to, it's going to be a long year. You have to have trust in your teammates, and the Ravens do that each and every week. The coaching staff, the decision makers, the owner, all these different personnel guys as well. Just unbelievable how this team is so tight-knit together and how they can be so amazing in the face of adversity, how they are so resilient as a football team. And this stuff is all coming out now for me, but I've said it throughout the course of the season, but it's right now because, hold on, have I said this yet? 22-3 with 3 minutes and 6 seconds left in the third quarter. I think I might have mentioned it once, but it's those types of things where the Ravens have had such a wild and crazy and unbelievable season. Week 1, crazy overtime loss to the Raiders. Week 2, amazing win against, their kryptonite, self-proclaimed kryptonite against the Kansas City Chiefs. Week 3, they're dead in the water against the Detroit Lions. Lamar Jackson completes a 4th and 19 to Sammy Watkins. Justin Tucker, NFL record field goal for the win. They're 2-1 then. Week 4 against Denver, they dominate for 3 quarters. The crazy drama at the end of the game, but that was an overall dominant win for them. Now in week 5, they're down big late in the 3rd quarter. They have to come back in the 4th quarter. The Ravens can't play from behind. Lamar Jackson can't throw. All these narratives starting to creep back up a little bit. And what does Lamar Jackson do? He is the narrative buster. Now, it's all about, all right, what narratives are coming out tonight? What narratives are coming out tomorrow? What narratives are coming out the next day and the next day and the next day? But Lamar Jackson doesn't care. He doesn't care about what other people think. As I've said time and time again, this team understands that they have a goal that they share. They don't care about the outside world. They don't care that they were down. They don't care about this and they don't care about that. What they care about is each other. And that's what makes this team so good. Not to mention they are talented players on the football field. They get the job done. The Ravens have built a very good team. Is there room for improvement? Yes. Do they have some depth issues right now? Sure. Is everything sunshine and rainbows? No. But as John Harbaugh did say, they have an opportunity to get a lot better. And that's kind of scary considering they're 4-1. Definitely have not played their best football. They played some pretty good football, let me tell you. And Lamar Jackson's played some of his best football. But as a team, the Ravens haven't played their best football. I think that's still ahead of them. And they're going to need their best football as they head into that stretch in the final 7 games where they have 5 of those next 7 opponents, or 5 of their last 7 opponents, their division rivals. The next 2 other than division rivals are the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Rams. So right now it's important to stack wins, gain momentum, figure out identities, figure out rotations and whatever, figure out what personnel you want on the field in certain situations so that when you get to week 10, week 11, week 12, whatever, you have a really big and good influence over what you put on the field, not only because you trust it, but because you know it can get the job done. Because if you have an influence on these guys to go out there, you believe in them, you understand that, and they understand that, it makes life so much easier, and especially against quality opponents. The Ravens have a lot of them on their schedule. I mean, it starts every week. Every NFL team is a good opponent. Every NFL team can beat you at this level. It's just a matter of what it is. There are trap games. That is a thing. So the Ravens, I'm so impressed. You know, I'm so amazed about this team and just what they have done so far in the face of losing J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters and not having Rashad Bateman and Ronnie Stanley, and Nick Boyle, and whoever you want to throw in that conversation. The Ravens have still found a way to come up with amazing victories, kind of go through their adversity and figure it all out on the fly and still be 4-1 through 5 weeks of the 2021 regular season. That's all that I have for you today here on Locked On Ravens, though. When we get back tomorrow, we'll be answering your mailbag questions. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.